Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this episode 444. I'm joined on this rather gloomy Tuesday morning by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPan89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing victory Tuesday, doing pretty well. Record-setting game by the Knicks, record-setting game by Saquon. Can't complain.
Yes, I'm sure that many of our listeners will be glad to hear about Saquon Barkley. But we're not here to talk about Saquon Barkley. We are here to talk about the Knicks, and before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel. You may watch this podcast there. If you are and you're not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday at the Prize. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about things even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which, you guessed it, is a podcast about the NFL hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially goes to a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props, head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. The Knicks had an interesting week of basketball since we last talked. They absolutely smoked the Suns. They followed that up with a dispiriting loss to the Utah Jazz on Saturday. And then yesterday, they kicked the ever-living shit out of the Denver Nuggets, who themselves have had a bit of a topsy-turvy start to the season, but nonetheless, a very good victory for the Knicks in Denver, a place they have not performed well over the years. But actually, their second win now. They're in the last three. So maybe Tom Thibodeau's Knicks are turning the tide. That said, look, the defensive concerns about this team will remain valid until they can fully turn it around. But if you're going to treat the defense with the skepticism that, quite frankly, it does deserve at this point in time, you also have to say the offense is proving to be every bit the juggernaut that many of us expected. And honestly, I would say, at least for me, has exceeded what I thought they would be able to do this early in the season. The Knicks are now second in offensive rating, according to Basketball Reference and NBA.com/stats. They are second in effective field goal percentage. They are second in true shooting percentage. They are fourth in turnover percentage. Fourth in turnover percentage. Most every metric it paints them as not just an elite offensive team, but an extremely well-rounded offensive team. They're second in field goal percentage. They're second in three-point percentage. Like, they are elite. They're first. The Knicks, the New York Knicks, are number one in free throw percentage. When is the last time you could say that? Shout out to not having Mitchell Robinson available this season. So they are scoring efficiently, and we've talked about this previously, and I mentioned this on the post game yesterday. While they have been an efficient and, quite frankly, an elite offense over the last couple of seasons, this is a different kettle of fish. This is stylistically and and also just how they're getting there. And when I mean how, I mean just what is the kind of core building blocks of what makes this offense elite. And in the last couple of seasons, it's been predominantly a really, really streamlined shot chart in combination with absolutely dominating the possession battle with controlling the offensive glass at a high level. They are now not a particularly strong offensive rebounding team, but part of the reason they're not a strong offensive rebounding team is they don't need to be. They don't need to be because they're hitting more shots and they have better spacing because you're playing 5 out. So I'm, look, I think the defense warrants concern, and yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. The Knicks currently ranked 22nd in defensive rating, so they've got a lot of work to do on that side of the ball, but it's pretty hard not to be kind of like, and especially when you watch the first half, especially of yesterday's game, and you're like, okay, clearly there's an ability to defend at a high level. Denver came into the game yesterday with the 8th best offensive rating in the league. Obviously, I'm sure that they ended up better than that. After the game, but that was a lot of that was buoyed off the second half where you're up 20 the entire time. The refs start making it a free throw line fucking parade in the third quarter. But you see that defensive, like, okay, for a couple quarters here against a high level team that you came out actually motivated against, a lot of this is not about ability. It's not like the Knicks can't close out to 3-point shooters or make the right rotations. It's about actually doing it. And obviously they've got to commit to that. And that's across the board. I think obviously Mikal Bridges deservedly in a lot of ways has gotten most of the kind of focus for the Knicks' defensive frailties, but it's not just him. They've miscommunicated. You have guys that are unsure where to rotate or fail to make rotations, whatever it is. It's collective. Josh Hart has had a lot of bouts of just over helping for no apparent reason. I mean, we talk about the one from that Bulls game consistently where he was just, I still have no idea what the fuck he's doing in this play where he's like standing in the middle of the paint for no apparent reason and leaving Zach LaVine wide open in the corner for a 3. He's had bouts of that this year. It's not just Mikal Bridges. Josh Hart's got to be better too. And Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns can certainly be better. And obviously those guys are never going to be high level defenders, but you need them to do the basics, right? It's not like, I don't expect this team to be elite defensively, but if you do the basics, they should be at least average. And if they can get to average defense with this offense, they're going to go places. So, yeah, I mean, look, I would say as disappointing as the Utah game was, yesterday was super encouraging to me anyways.
Yeah, I mean, they might have finished with a higher offensive rating. The Nuggets might have than their season average, but I don't think the Knicks. I think you look at the numbers. Besides those free throws, the Knicks held them to 33 3-point attempts. I think most of the time you live with that. That's pretty good by our standards, especially from a team like Denver that loves to get them up. I think it's worth noting too that when the Knicks lost to the Jazz, altitude was talked about. At least from how long I've watched the Knicks in Denver, they always seem to struggle because Denver's generally been an up-tempo team. It's even last year. I think the blowout came at home, but they went into Denver, and granted they didn't have OG. But that's altitude is something that the Knicks like to play slow. And it has and you're just in general, that's a home court advantage for these teams, right? Teams aren't used to training at that level. But if you look at the how they defended the Nuggets, I mean, Nikola Jokic had 22 points, 9 of 20 shooting, held him to 7 3-point attempts, and he had only hit 2, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. I mean, they turned Nikola Jokic into basically DeJounte Murray last night. You'll take that. Speaking of Murray's, Jamal Murray got to the line a lot, but he's only 1 for 5 from 3. And the Knicks went at him quite a bit on defense. Really, I mean, you talk about they went 11 for 33 from 3, but 7 of those attempts were from Russell Westbrook, who went 4 of 7. If the other team's going to buoy their 3-point shooting with Russell Westbrook, you'll take that any day of the week. Now, are the Nuggets at their best? Probably not. But I thought that was one of the better, considering the opponent, considering you're playing the guy who probably should win MVP this year. Um, I thought that was a great defensive performance. And I think the Knicks also have never lost the Nuggets with OG Anunoby healthy. And I would start there. He's been awesome this season. People have harped on Bridges, but OG has really made a leap on both. Though we knew what he could do on defense. It's kind of been more of the same. Besides, I think he's been a little bit better at point of attack than he had some struggles with Maxi, but we know what he could do on defense. But I think this is definitely a Knicks high for OG with 40 points, just torrid shooting, 16 to 23, 5 for 7 from three. And even threw in 4 assists, of course, a block. OG has, there are people who are saying he should get in the All-Star game. Probably one of the numbers, it would have to be one of those holistic type things, but they did that with Derek White last year. And the Knicks aren't quite that good, so I doubt OG actually gets that bump, but he has had that level of impact when you consider both ends. And especially, carrying the load on offense when the Knicks' other wing hasn't been great. I think Brunson's process has been awesome at 23 points, 17 assists last night. Since the beginning of the year when he had some stinkers and he was really struggling to find his teammates, his process has been good, even when the shots don't fall. I don't see him forcing as many shots. I think he's learned that he's just not getting the calls he was used to, so he's not throwing up stuffs in the paint. I think he's been more methodical in his decision making. I mean, 17 assists to 2 turnovers. That is fantastic. This is a generally guy who that stat looks good for, but compared to what we saw early in the season, you have to like that. Cat 30 and 15. The fact that he's like the third or fourth guy I'm mentioning here, and that's just standard at this point, is pretty good. He definitely seemed to like the matchup with Jokic, and I think got the better of it. He wasn't defending Jokic as much, but it was great to have him healthy, especially after his questionable. I thought Deuce looked good, quiet first half, but I mean, I think it just seems like every game with this team, it's like that meme, right? It's over, we're so back. It's over, we're so back. That's what, and I think that makes a lot of sense with a new team, right? I think the one constant throughout, there is one constant complaint that is becoming a concern. But I think in general, like after we lost the Jazz, right? So many people were like, you can't lose this team. They're 3-12. They're 3. Well, that happens sometimes. Is it great? No. Is it going to drive Thibs nuts? Of course, it drives us nuts. But it's this team is going to be high variance as the pieces continue to come together, as they rely a lot on offense too, frankly.
Yeah. The ups and downs are not that surprising to me. I think the losses in the moment can be very frustrating, but like they're not atypical of a team that's just coming together and obviously has a lot to figure out. It's not even to really make an excuse for it. It's just understandable. But I think the main thing is, and to me, the main reason why there's so much consternation over the various losses they've had is very specifically that Mikal Bridges has not played as well as you'd hope. He's definitely not lived up to what they paid out for him so far. And that's concerning, obviously, because the Knicks don't control their future draft capital for the most part. And that was a pretty significant bet. So I understand that consternation, that concern. On top of that, because of injuries, right, you lose Precious and Shamet right on the cusp of the season. Deuce has missed a bunch of time. He just came back last night. Good to see that. And that has exposed a bench that has been kind of worn down via trades and a Benedict Arnold-like defection in free agency. So the depth is not where it was in the last couple of years, where, I mean, you think back to the start of last season and our concern was like, how are we going to get all these guys minutes? How are we going to get enough minutes for, Dante and Quickly and Hart and Hartenstein and, should Deuce be in the rotation? And how are we going to, if Quentin Grimes wants to do more, how are we going to get him more touches? Can RJ Barrett take a league? You had all these concerns and guys vying for minutes, and you were unsure of how to balance that. And now it's like, can we get some more guys in here so we can rest Josh Hart and OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges a little bit? So I think those two things are really building off of each other and have created issues. On top of of course they need to figure stuff out defensively, and then look, the other piece is the Knicks defense last year was good. I thought down the stretch of the season it had weakened quite a bit. That was reasonable given how weird last year was with the amount of injuries and time missed and whatever. I think they just wore down. But the year before, when the Knicks, win the playoff series against Cleveland and then lose in the second round to Miami, they were 19th in defensive rating. They were not a particularly good defense, and they weren't a particularly good defense the year before in 2021-22 when the Knicks missed the playoffs. They haven't always been some awesome defense under Tom Thibodeau, as much as he has this reputation as all of his teams are always great at defense. I don't think that's really the case, and I don't think that's going to be the case with this year's team. It's okay. We just need them to get to, your limitations are your limitations, but you can't make mistakes and give up easy buckets. I mean, the Utah game where you just have bad rotations or non-existent rotations leading to wide open threes, I mean, that's just not good enough. And I understand, look, is it possible that you have 2 days off and you're playing a team with whatever it was, 3 wins and, take your eye off the ball? Sure. Yeah. I mean, that happens. You're playing at altitude also, whatever. There's weird stuff. And also the Knicks they didn't make shots. What was it? A combined 3 of 18 from 3 for Brunson and Cat. So that hurts too, obviously. But you don't want to make it easy on top of being limited, right? Because we know the Knicks have limitations. You're going to be limited in what you can do defensively and how good you can be when Cat is at the 5 and Jalen Brunson is on the floor as well. You're just not going to be an elite defense. It's okay. It's reality. You just got to adjust to it. And you need to make sure that you're controlling everything you can control. To their to their credit, they have been one of the better defensive rebounding teams in the league this year. They're second in defensive rebound percentage at this point. So they've cleaned that up. That was a major concern earlier in the season. Not so much now. But obviously,
it was also a question, I think, with Cat at the 5, right? Is that something? It was just a general question, even when the trade was made. If you play him at the 5, what's going to happen to the rebounding, right? I think you have to give him credit, and definitely Josh Hart as well, right?
Yeah. But you can't be 23rd in opponent effective field goal percentage while you're also 28th in opponent turnover percentage. You know what I mean? You cannot just give up easy shots and quality shots and you got to make teams feel you've got to make them work for the extra shot. And the Knicks have not done a good enough job of that so far this year. They are 6th in 3-point percentage against. And if you look at, opponent 3-point rate, the Knicks are allowing the most number of threes against the entire in the league this season so far per 100 possessions. So they've got to, either make those shots harder or run guys off the line, force them in. It can't just be that you get everything you want. And, they've also got to do, I think, a better job of protecting the paint a bit, although they have improved that. They're 22nd now, actually. Or I guess you could say they are 9th in percentage at the rim allowed, 66.2, according to Basketball Reference. So that's good, but it can't just come at the expense of these weird, not just weird games, but games where you're kind of just completely conceding the 3-point line. Now, this has been an issue for the Knicks at various points under Tom Thibodeau, especially early in seasons, and it's stuff that tends to improve. So I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt, and the team deserves the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, these are all valid concerns. But I think it all does go back to Mikal to me, where a lot of the concern is about him. Like, he's just got to be better. And, I don't know what to make of last night where I thought his defense was better. I'm not going to say it was like awesome. I think it was better. But I would like to see more. I would like to see games where he really, it's one thing to kind of mirror your man and be in the possession and contest, but like I would
Sometimes
like
you got to
to,
look at the man in the mirror. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I would just like to see him actually wall off the paint, like cut off drives, cut off penetration at some point. And it hasn't been there yet. Quite honestly, it hasn't been there yet. There are these weird moments where he's like defending on the ball, and then it just feels like, for whatever reason, you're on ball at this point. Like, he just falls asleep and gives up an easy drive. His man's able to get a step, and it makes it harder on everybody then. There's some stuff off ball where it's not even like he's asleep necessarily, but he's just, you set a screen and then he takes the long way around, and now it's like you're playing from behind the entire possession. I don't know what it's all like. I don't know what that's about. Because to me, it's like that's a focus thing. And you could be like lacking in physical force, which he definitely has been. He again did not attempt a free throw last night, which I don't even know what to say about it at this point. It's just fucking weird. But like, I think the focus part of it is, I don't know if that's more concerning or less concerning, but it is concerning in some ways because it's like, hey, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, you're just not locked in. Like, if you're off ball and you fall asleep, I'm a little bit more open to like understanding that. We just have these possessions on ball where it's like he's literally on ball, and then for whatever reason, it's just like he just stops moving his feet, and I don't understand it. I think it's very, very weird. But the upshot is that the Knicks, without him firing on all cylinders, and even offensively, he's not. He's got the worst true shooting percentage, and effective field goal percentage of all the main rotation players. Like, he's become an extremely mid-range heavy player for God knows what reason. His 3-point shot right now is nowhere near good enough, especially above the break. He was brutal. Yesterday, he just couldn't hit from anywhere. I know he went 2 of 8 from 3. He had a couple from the corners, but, given his track record as a shooter and the quality of the shots he was getting, that should have been like a 5 of 8 3-point shooting type of night for him. And again, like, he's just not attacking the rim with any force, so he's not getting to the line. So there's just weird stuff going on with him. But the Knicks don't really have any recourse. Like, it's not like they're not going to trade him. You can't trade him right now. It would be insane, first of all, to even try to trade him, given the outlay you made. You got to play this out a bit and really give it a chance, and give him a chance to get his shit together. It's just, it is frustrating to watch him. And obviously the Knicks scored 145 last night. They absolutely destroy the Nuggets, and you don't want to sit here talking about negative things, but it is concerning to like watch what is going on with him offensively. I don't know what else to say than that, because to me it's extremely frustrating to see everybody else kind of putting up career best numbers in a lot of ways, be it OG Anunoby or Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns or Josh Hart or Deuce McBride or even Campaign right now, whatever. Like, and then to see Bridges and he's just fucking out there. Like, he is below his average. He's below his career averages in 3-point shooting, field goal percentage, and effective field goal percentage, and true shooting percentage. He obviously is just not. His free throw rate is pretty much. I can't imagine that there's a high minutes player with a worse free throw rate than him right now.
He's taken 11 free throws on the season.
He hasn't shot a free throw since November 11th.
He's averaging 0.6 per game, and his free throw rate itself is an anemic 4.5%. 0.045. That's his free throw rate. Which is, to put it in perspective, I mean, there are like just a shooter guys. Let's see what Quentin Grimes is for last year. Like, it's I don't think I've ever seen a free throw rate that low. Yeah, Quentin Grimes this year is at 19.195 free throw rate. His last year in New York, if you remember, when he was just awful, 0.119, which is about 3 times higher than Bridges. So,
and it's like it's but the thing that makes no sense is it's not like Bridges isn't taking shots. Like that's what makes it weird. It is not about like we need you to look to score. He's looking to score. That's not like the issue. The issue is him looking to score right now is like, okay, the 3 ball, yeah, I'm concerned he's not hitting it, but I'm also the opinion like you gotta like I kind of roll with Thibs' logic on this, where it's like, look, the guy has a track record as a quality shooter. You trust for that to come around. He's had weird bouts of bad shooting from the perimeter before in his career, before kind of turning things around. So I'm like not too worried about that. But every time he puts the ball on the deck and it's like he's gonna try to score inside the arc, everything ends in some weird fucking like fadeaway thing. And like he took a pull-up yesterday and he's fading on it. And even on his threes, like he had a couple open corner threes yesterday where for some reason he doesn't get square, or he catches it off the half turn and he's squaring up as he goes up to shoot it. It's like, dude, can you just fucking be normal? Like, why are you always fading? Like, I don't know what is going on with him, but he's like fading on every fucking shot now. He had one yesterday in transition where I forgot who it is. Somebody, I think it might have been Campaign, threw it open to him. He's wide open on the wing. Like, you know, like there's not a guy within 15, 20 feet of him. He like rushes into that shot. So he ends up taking this leaning 3 and there's no reason for it, dude. Just like get fucking settled, square up and shoot normally. And it's the threes. It's the mid-range. Like even the mid-range. I know he's been on fire to start the season. Even on all those, he's fading. It's a bad habit. It's a really bad habit. And that needs to be corrected because these are things that I don't know what else to say. He's got to fucking find himself, because this is just like, it's a fairly unacceptable and weird shot profile he's taking right now. And I don't just mean like, oh, he's taking way too much mid-range. Fine, take the mid-range shots you want. I don't even mind most of the mid-range shots he's taking, other than the fact that he's fading on all of them, and half the time is for no apparent reason. But when you turn layups into mid-range or like fading, you know, back, like you're fading away, like I don't get that at all. It's just weird. He's now shooting a career high percentage of shots from 3 to 10 feet. He's shooting second highest career. He took 20.5 his 4th year in Phoenix. He's taking 19.3% of his shots from 3 to 10 feet. And he's taking 18.9% of his shots from 10 to 16 feet, which is the second highest mark of his career. Like, I don't understand this at all. He's taking by far, this is not even close, the lowest amount of percentage of shots at the rim. He's taking 11.9% of his shots at the rim, which is,
it's not as bad as the free throw rate, but yeah, it's lower than what his career has been. Career average is 22%, so it's about half his career average. It has been trending down, but even last year in Brooklyn, it was 17%. The year before, it was 17%. So you'd like to see that be closer to that at least.
Well, the benefits of playing on a strong offense with other strong players should manifest in your underlying,
especially numbers. 5 out, right?
Yeah, in some fashion. And instead, it just feels like he's playing so much within himself almost, and he looks unsure of what he's supposed to do. And I'm sympathetic to that, because he's new and he's adjusting. And last year he was like kind of got to do whatever the fuck he wanted in Brooklyn, and now he obviously has to play serious basketball. So I'm sympathetic to that to an extent, but he's not giving you like, can something about your effort just be like attack the rim with force? Is that possible? Like get to the free throw. I just don't understand the free throw thing. I don't want to, again, I don't mean to harp on it, but it just, I have no explanation for it. There's no explanation for it, because he's not hurt and he's never avoided going to the line the way he is right now. And he's not shooting that well from the perimeter. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you do see as players age, and he's not that old, but he's 28 now. As players move forward in their career, there are players I've seen who become more jump shot oriented. Carmelo Anthony is the example I always think of. When he came to the league, he was terrific at getting to the rim, but wasn't a very efficient, even 3-point shooter, right? People harped on the mid range stuff, but or his shot selection, but he wasn't a great 3-point shooter until the middle of his career. And then when he became a very good 3-point shooter, he stopped getting those rim attempts, and he wasn't as efficient. Part of that was a lack of lift. Opposite of shout out Roy Hibbert, and part of that was just perhaps just wanting to preserve himself, right? So I've thought that might be the case of Bridges. I've thought also maybe that there is just a lack of. He is also, for what it's worth, it's obviously extremely small sample. He's shooting 64% from the free throw line. I don't know if his shot tweak has affected that, and he just doesn't have confidence in going to the free throw line right now.
I don't know what he's confident in right now. He's not confident doing anything.
He's confident taking mid-range shots, and for what it's worth,
I don't even know if he's confident taking them. I think he's settling. I think he's like doesn't want to go to the rim, and he's not super confident in his 3-point shot. So the one thing he can do is shoot the mid-range.
I don't true, but he's doing it at an extremely high level. It's 57%.
Honestly, who cares? Who cares? Like,
no, I'm not saying it makes up for it. What I'm saying is, if you're trying, I'm trying to understand why this is happening, right? I'm wondering if he's like, because he tweaked his shot, he doesn't feel comfortable at the free throw line, or he thinks that his free throw game needs to be tweaked. I mean, because it does look weird, like the 11 times he's done it this year.
I mean, look, he's taken 11 free throws. I don't know. That's such a small sample. Who knows what the hell that means? He looks like he's like fucking. Everything is so devoid of force and confidence. It's all like, it feels like he's just trying to get through games without costing the team. Like it doesn't feel like he's making plays to like win the game. It's like he's trying to make plays to avoid getting hurt or just like not fuck up. I mean, as much as like I think his defensive effort has been better lately, I would struggle very, very much to say it's even been good. Like he's just, there's still way too many weird instances where, there's a couple yesterday where I think there was a miscommunication on how to handle a pick and roll, right? And that's not entirely on him. But like, in every sport, your players are not always going to execute to scheme perfectly, which is why you need players who are able to play above the scheme. He is not playing above any fucking scheme right now. When is the last time you watched him on a defensive possession and you were like, wow, he saved us right there? I can't think of one time off the top of my head where I'm like, yeah, man, that was a really good defensive possession or a sequence of possessions. With everybody else, like with OG, I'm like, every game you get like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 possessions. You're like, man, what a fucking stop by OG. Like, I don't think Karl Anthony Towns is a good defender. I think he's giving you the best he can give you. I think he's giving you an honest effort. He's giving you an honest effort, which is like all I can really expect of him. And you know what? I'm going to lower the bar for him when he's doing everything he's doing offensively. I'm going to lower the bar for Jalen Brunson because he's got real physical limitations. And generally, I think his effort is right around where like you can expect his effort to be. Obviously, there's stuff that needs to be cleaned up on his end and Cat's end, like we saw in the Utah game. But for generally speaking, if you told me this was their level of defense, 17 games through the season, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like that seems about what I expected. Josh Hart needs to pick it up on defense. But I promise you, I've seen him make more impactful defensive plays throughout this season than Mikal Bridges, even last night, right? Last night, I think Josh Hart had like 3 or 4 or 5 plays where he digs down onto Jokic or the ball handler and is able to knock the ball free. There was one possession, I'll try and find it, and I don't even want to put it out because it's just, I'll save it for the Discord. We can slander Mikal Bridges in the Discord. But like I think it was Hart that knocked the ball loose, and the ball is rolling towards Mikal Bridges, and he tries to like gently go down and like scoop it up while like Peyton Watson's diving onto the floor to get it. And it's just like, in isolation, I wouldn't pick up on that because I would just be like, you don't need to dive on the floor all the time. Sometimes that happens, whatever. But it's the fact that like it feels like every 50-50 ball, everything like that, he's just not interested in seriously competing for it. And it stands out like a sore thumb when you watch Josh Hart, or when you watch OG Anunoby, or you watch Karl-Anthony Towns on the boards, or you watch Jalen Brunson take a charge in transition, put his body on the line, or you watch, Deuce McBride fight over a screen, fight through a screen, or you watch even fucking campaign, like the way he's playing, where he's competing really hard, I think. And I mean, that's always been a case for his career. You see it, like, look, dude, I mean, a guy that we've all mercilessly slandered over his career with the Knicks, Jericho Sims, I think he's playing legitimately good ball right now. I think Jericho Sims is playing pretty solid, like pretty much all you could ask of him as a backup big at a time that we're shorthanded. I think he's giving you solid production, right? 13, 14, 50 minutes a game. Jericho Sims has been fine so far. Mikal Bridges is just the one guy that is playing so far below expectations. And not only is he playing below expectations, he is not playing with the type of force or aggression or will or confidence that is necessary to be successful. And it is concerning. And I think, again, like, when people fly off the handle every time we lose a game and it comes back to Mikal Bridges, it's not so much that he is struggling, which happens to every player. It's that, like, as he's struggling, he seems to be kind of like just not. It's like you want to see somebody like fight to get out of it, like fucking hit somebody. Like, I'm not saying punch them. I'm saying, like, when you're going through a screen, fucking run through a screen. Put your shoulder through somebody, right? When your shot's not going in from three, okay, drive to the fucking rim with any modicum of force and try to draw a foul, or at least put the fucking a shot blocker or a rim protector in a position where they've got to contest, and yeah, they might foul you. Like, play with some level of aggression that isn't just hunting mid-range shots. Like, that's the only thing he's doing right now at a high level. And that's not particularly valuable. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. But at least with the offense, you're kind of like, all right, we're still an elite offensive team, even amidst his struggles. Defensively, that's not the case, right? Like, they need him to be better than this. He has to be better than this. He has to be. I don't know how else to put it, because I know yesterday he ends up like a plus 18 or whatever the fuck it was. But even yesterday, I'm watching that game and I'm like, I thought he gave a better defensive effort for sure than he did in Utah. Again, still hesitate to call it good. But like, Deuce McBride was way better to me on defense than him. Way, way better. I think he's fighting over screens. He's getting back in front of his man after getting over the screen, right? He's cutting off the drive. Like, and yeah, look, he had one yesterday where he cuts off the drive when he gets around the screen on Christian Braun, but then Brown's able to draw a foul, which is like, okay, that's frustrating, but at least you're seeing that, like, that real physicality and fight at the point of attack you need. Whereas with Bridges, it's like he gives these guys the freedom of day, and then he's always playing from behind, and it's like Jesus, man, can you like put your fucking chest into somebody? Like, it's just I'm so frustrated by it, and it's ridiculous for me to be talking about this after the Knicks score 145 fucking points yesterday. But that's how much it stands out like a sore thumb. And we can all sit here and psychoanalyze it and whatever, but I'm just here to watch the Knicks, man. I'm not here to like figure out what the fuck is going on in Mikal Bridges' head. I am not Dr. Melfi. I'm not here to fucking diagnose him, and explain to him what's going on. But like, this is just not good. Like, it's not. Like, I'm not even at the point where I'm like, he's getting there. If he was like, you want to see more progress than this, is the best way I can put it. You're 17 games in. I am trying very, very hard to not shit on him, but I have failed starting since last week because it's just, I don't know what to make of this stuff. I'm like, just do something with force, do something with confidence, do something that is going to make you stand up and be like, all right, like that was fucking, all right, like that was a really memorable moment. And he just hasn't had anything. I mean, I guess he had that block at the end of the Brooklyn game. And even on that play, if you watch it back, he gets this is another thing that he's been doing lately that's really fucking, it's a bad habit. And it's one that, you talk about like anybody that's ever played defense or coached defense or whatever. And this is across sports. The worst thing you can do when you're defending the ball, right? Or like in the NFL, if you're a cornerback, is you don't want to turn your back. You don't want to get spun around. You want to flip your hips, right? But you don't want to get spun around and turn your back to the ball. Even on that play against Brooklyn where he blocks it, go back and watch it. He completely turns his back to the ball, and he's able to recover and get back in front of it and contest the shot and block Schroeder. But like, if that's, I don't know, John Morant, he's done. Like, that's a tie game. We're going to overtime. He's getting smoked. And yesterday he had a possession on Christian Brown in a pick and roll where he gets totally spun around. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Christian Brown is spinning you around in fucking circles like a dreidel, man. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I don't know what is going on with him. I really don't. And the offense, again, I'm less concerned about that, as weird as it all is. But it's hard. It's like you notice that more because the defense is so far away from anything you would have expected. Like, if this is the level of defense that we can expect from Mikal Bridges, I mean, you're going to need to start having some real difficult conversations about what his role is on this team, because there's very little argument the player we have seen this year that Mikal Bridges has shown so far, defensively in particular, is in any way, shape, or form more valuable, especially given the Knicks' needs, than Deuce McBride. And I don't even, like, that's not even a conversation to me. Deuce McBride has been way better than him this year, like significantly so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not there yet. I do think, like, against certain teams, against even a team like Boston, right, where you have two big guards in the backcourt, the lack of size from Deuce, if anything, Bridges is just bigger. It's tough to disagree with too much of that assessment. And I think you look at the cost they gave up, right? Well, forget about the cost even for this second, right? This experiment, what the Knicks are running, they're trying to build a defense where their two best players are subpar defenders. However far you want to go in that distinction, fine. That's generally not very common. I don't think it's very common for teams to have two subpar defenders in their starting lineup. And it's certainly very uncommon for teams to win a championship with a subpar rim protector. The experiment is, can you put them next to three good defenders, especially if two of them are elite, and make that work? I brought up the Bulls a lot from a couple of years ago, but before Lonzo got hurt, that was actually a top 10 defense. Would that be as easy? I think offense has gotten even better. No, but the point is Caruso and Ball function at that kind of level to make up for three bad defenders. Hart is not at the level he needs to be. First of all, before I get into Bridges, he needs to be much better on his rotations. He needs to just be more consistent. There are just bad decision making he's made. But he's given a lot, right? And even if, how much do you weigh that versus the defensive rebounding, which really he deserves credit for being elite because that was not a given. And I think Cat deserves credit too. But the point is, you made that trade, even if things were going better, it probably would have been called an overpay. You make that trade because, yes, we could make that for a star. We could wait out. We could have traded something like that for Donovan Mitchell, for example, right? But this is a guy that, now we can have Cat, And this guy gives us that size and that defense on the wing. And him combined with OG makes that viable on defense. And on offense, it's just going to blow teams away. And that's better than trading for a star. And to be honest, like, yeah, I think it's really the defense that's concerning, because you make that trade because you're like, he can be an elite role player. That means elite defense. And especially his job should be easier because he's playing next to a guy who's been playing like a defensive player of the year candidate. He's playing, and I think that he has to be better, right? And if he isn't, I've said that if he has a 4% free throw rate by the trade deadline, and he's not playing better in defense, I think they have to at least gauge the market and see how much they can recoup. But I doubt that happens. You have to give it a chance. But I'd be interested to see where he's at February. Let me throw this back at you. And again, I know we don't want to do any psychoanalysis here, but last year we saw with particularly Alec Burks, but also Bogdanovich. And yeah, it's a little sad that we're hyping up one of our prime offseason acquisitions by comparing him to those guys. But it took them a little bit of while to get.
Did they ever strike you as this guy is not playing with force? It didn't strike me as that. Like, to me, those guys were just struggling. Like, and Burks, in his instance, I think he was dealing with some kind of like ankle issue or whatever the hell it was, because he missed a bunch of time.
I'm talking about on the defense, though, just like, stopping and like just being a step slow and kind of the lack of urgency.
Bogdanovich was born a step slow. Like Burks is like
I'm
58
talking, but
years
there was
old.
like kind of an unseriousness that they had to shake off, right? I wonder how much of that is what's going on, where Bridges didn't play for a serious team last year, right?
I have a lot less sympathy for it, because
it's not about having sympathy. It's just looking at.
But he had an entire offseason to recalibrate his mindset. He had an entire offseason. He had training camp.
It's not the same as a real game, though.
He had training camp. He had preseason. He's played 17 regular season games. In that time, you can count on one hand the amount of quality defensive moments he's had. That's just not. I don't want to. I understand the point you're making. I'm just not interested in like giving him that benefit of the doubt. Now, if you want to look for like why should we be optimistic about his ability to maybe bounce back, the prime example would be like a player like Rudy Gobert, where his first year with Minnesota after, that massive trade, he did not have a good season by his standards, right? He fell off. Next year, he bounces back, wins Defensive Player of the Year, in my opinion, deservedly. And whatever. Like, now, would it be very fucking annoying if we had to wait an entire season to get the version of Mikal Bridges that we're hoping to get? Sure, yeah, that'd be very annoying. But like, yeah, I mean, and if you want real, like, the only analysis I have that any kind of understanding of why he might be lacking confidence, and I truly believe this, I brought this up really since the start of the season. He knows what he was traded for. Like, he knows, right? And he understands what that means. Everybody understands what that means. That is a pressure that I absolutely believe is what weighs on him and weighs on guys when they get traded like that. And like, look, he's not Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell or whatever, in terms of like, these guys are superlative stars, right? That have that mindset and carry themselves as such, and have carried themselves as such for the duration of their careers. That's not who Mikal Bridges is. That's not what he's been. I think that weighs on him differently. That type of, when you know that what your price tag was, I think that weighs on him differently than it would a player like of those guys' caliber. And that, I'm sure, is part of what's going on here, because every missed shot, right? It feels like, oh my God, like I mean, think about it. Every time he misses a shot, everybody, like, you see it in our game chat. It's where it's like 5 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks. Like, we could have gotten this guy. We could have gotten that guy. This guy could have get, like, it is literally every shot. It is every missed shot. You see it. Every missed defensive possession, like every bad defensive possession, every single time. That is the conversation. That's, heavy lies the crown and all that. But like, I'm sure that is weighing on him. I'm positive of that. Like I've never been more certain of something. I also don't give a fuck at this point. Like, okay, I mean, I have that luxury because I just get to sit here and talk into a mic about basketball and pretend like I know my shit. But like, it is what it is, right? The price has been paid. The picks are gone. You are in New York. You play for the Knicks. It is time to fucking nut up here. All right, like we need to be strong. You need to be physical. You need to be confident. You need to take the shots that are good. You need to try to get to the goddamn fucking free throw line. I don't know what else to say other than that. Like he's. I understand why this thing will weigh on you. You got to get over it, man. Like you've got to find a way. I don't know what that involves. And to the credit of the team, I thought it was very obvious yesterday that both Brunson and Hart were really trying to get him going. I thought they were definitely trying to find him for shots. You know, Hart hit him on a fucking absolute dime in transition for a layup. That was awesome. Like you can see that they were trying to get him going. I think even on one where he missed a three, they came back down, whatever, there's a stoppage in play. And I think you could hear Brunson kind of like encouraging him, like, you know, like keep fucking shooting that. That's a good shot. Maybe that's what it takes. Like maybe that's really what it takes. Maybe it's like, hey, if he gets hot from three, all of a sudden, because we know how this stuff works, right? We saw this with Julius. And obviously he's not like moping around like a Julius would. But you see how there are certain players where it's like your offense not being where you want it to be affects your defense, right? And it's kind of like a feedback loop. And those things compound, but you got to break the loop. You got to break the circle.
And you are not the kind of, you are the player who brings value on defense. You are at best the third option here. That is the one thing that, like Randall is one thing. He was the number 2 option, right? So it still doesn't help to compound it by playing poorly on defense, but you're not that level of player. You're never going to be here on offense because that's not what you're needed for. I do think that another reason for optimism is, to your point, he plays on an org and a team that has generally been able to figure this stuff out. Randall was the one you mentioned, rehabilitated after one of the most very
rehabilitated like Chrissy.
Yeah.
After
I wonder if that's what they did, right? Thibs got in a room. You're an embarrassment to everyone around you. You're weak. You're pathetic.
I walked in. Your head was in the toilet. Disgusting.
So I think this is an org that's generally been good at getting the most. I mean, even a guy. I mean, it didn't work out with Cam because he didn't play, but he's been a pretty good on-ball defender. He's kind of carved out a niche after leaving here, and that had been showing in Portland too. I think that they get as much as you can out of most of these guys. You saw it with, Isaiah Hartenstein was injured or something. It doesn't look like there's anything like that with Bridges, but there's been guys who haven't fit in at first, and he does have like a pretty, like, if your biggest thing is you're not going full out on defense, I think this is the environment where generally it gets people to play better and give more effort. I don't think that quite ever got to Randall, but I also think instinctively he wasn't on Bridges' level. Bridges he knows what to do and is good at it.
Well, like when they play zone, like just a small thing to that point, like you see Bridges, like he'll flash to the free throw line. Like he fundamentally understands like that type of spatial kind of, okay, where should I go? What's a good spot for me? So yeah, you definitely see that. He sets screens about as hard as Randall did. So that's good.
Yeah. So if your number one thing is you need him to play harder, right, or with more force or urgency and confidence, it helps that his best friend is on the court with him all the time. right? It helps that that his coach is somebody who's generally gotten that out of players in the past. It helps that most of the guys on this team have played for that coach. So if Thibs really gets on him, a guy who's gone through both the like, I think Cat was effusive in his praise for Thibs, right? To the but we know that they've had issues in the past. To the extent that that might rub Bridges the wrong way, whatever, you have the right environment for those issues to kind of come back to fruition. But he has to be a lot better in defense. And the other thing is this: he's been playing better, but his role has changed, right? They wanted him to be the attack dog as a point of attack defender early in the season. It was it started off with difficulty sliders slid all the way up against Boston, and that but he struggled in that, and then they had to start putting Anunoby on the point of attack defender, which I don't love because I think OG Anunoby is a great point of attack defender. He struggled with Maxi last year, but generally you're fine with him, and you can switch him everywhere, and his length is so disruptive. Like if you don't get him on a screen, he's going to just make a ball handler's life hell. But he's so impactful when he can roam all over the floor. Like it seems like every time he traps, it's a steal. It's not just his length it's also his timing. So I love him in that role, and the fact that we can't use him as that is a little bit of an indictment on Mikal Bridges. And Bridges is a good off-ball defender, but if you're gonna be in that role, then you have to wreak the kind of havoc that OG did, and you can't say he's just better because you might not be the vertical athlete is, but you're just about as big. You have the same kind of arms. You have good instincts. So even the defense, if you want to say it's been better, and it's just a matter of playing with force, I am a little worried that is this a guy that we can't ever really use at the point of attack? Because again, that makes him a little bit less. Is this just a guy who's never going to be able to get over screens? Is he just not agile enough to stay with a guy like Tyrese Maxey or a guy like Trae Young or whatever, right? Those are the worrisome things in terms of long term. But in terms of just playing with more force, and the other thing is is this shot just broken now? Whatever he did to it, I don't know if it looks as different anymore. I haven't been analyzing it, but those are the two things where you're I don't think we can come back from. In terms of playing harder, in terms of feeling more comfortable, in terms of playing with more confidence, this being the team he's on, who they gave up for him, it's different than Grimes saying, I don't have 1,000, I have 100-pound weight on his chest. A, doesn't have the track record. B, the Knicks had signed someone, and it was that's not an excuse, but it's they weren't going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Mikal is going to get some benefit of the doubt. He can play with some security there. So those are the things where I think I would be shocked if those things, if he didn't play with more effort. I don't expect his free throw rate to go up to RJ Barrett levels or something, but I expect him to get back up into the teens, with layup frequency, at least enough to keep defensive honest, so he can really pop from mid range, which I do think he's hitting them at Kevin Durant levels. He's been an elite mid range shooter, so I don't think that's something to completely dismiss. But leveraging that to amplify the rest of your games and playing with more force on defense, I expect those things to change. The things that long term, if they don't change, really make that trade still kind of not that great, would be if he's turned into a mediocre 3-point shooter, and if there are just physical limitations that prevent him from defending point of attack defenders, or defending at the point of attack very consistently.
Yeah. All right, let's move on from the Mikal Bridges annual hour, or annual, I guess, weekly hour at this point. So, speaking of players who are playing well, Karl-Anthony Towns, I mean, look, OG, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Brunson yesterday were magnificent. Karl-Anthony Towns now for the season, he's averaging 26 points, 26.3 points, 12.6 rebounds, 3.1 assists. He's shooting 54.8 from the field, 47.1 from three, 84.3 from the line, 62 effective field goal percentage. I mean, everything is just on a high for him offensively. I don't really know what else to say other than he's pretty much delivering on everything you could have expected since the Knicks traded for him. It seems like moving back to the 5 has completely rejuvenated his full game offensively. He's shooting a career high from the field right now. That's a career best, 54.8% from the field. His effective, like everything is everything is at its career best basically right now. I mean, it's pretty wild to see. He's got his previous high in terms of true shooting was his third year in the league. He was at 64.6 true shooting. He's at 66.2 right now through 16 games. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, like, what are you seeing from him? Obviously the scoring is obvious, but what are you seeing from him that kind of stands out to you?
I think it was the trajectory he was on. But one, he's playing next to the best point guard or perimeter creator, at least for him, that he's played with in his career. Let's start with that. If you want to say Anthony Edwards is on that level as a scorer, as an overall offensive force who can elevate the team, maybe. But as terms of or is it as a scorer or as someone who can carry the team and do the things that Brunson can do? Yeah, absolutely. Edwards is on that level. He's not a guy, I think it's not, I wouldn't even say he's not a guy who elevates the team, because he can draw attention and create for others. But getting the most out of a guy like Cat, I think Brunson's probably quit better than that. And you can see it with his facilitating. But it's like, this is a guy who's always been an elite shooter. And as players progress, they get better at shooting. I think the biggest thing, I say this every week, it seems like, but the biggest thing I didn't pick up just how fully it was is the passing. Is a guy who can throw with touch. He can throw with speed. He can see the whole floor, right? This is not I think the worry was when we got him, like, oh, he's not going to draw doubles, so that's more valuable. And I disagree, actually. The more I see it, the more like a guy who can actually just threaten the whole floor. It's like in football, right? Like ultimately, like now, you want quarterbacks with mobility. Like I said, you want guys who can draw doubles, but the value of a guy getting out of the pocket and forcing defenders to like either peel off or stay with the receiver, and those kind of decisions, they have a lot of value. You still want a quarterback who can attack the entire field from the pocket, even without having to draw that attention, right? Who can see the whole field, who can make all defenders off ball account for it. And that's in addition to just insane shot making, the ability to drive, the ability to finish. You can hit from mid range. I mean, just, I've talked about kind of the transition threes, walking into them. It's also just like a defender puts their hand down for a second and Cat just catches the ball. I mean, how often do you see that? Like they reset, there's nothing here, let's get it to the center at the top of the key and reset. The defender relaxes just a second, 3 points, easy. It is incredible. I will say I was not in favor of the Cat trade for the last couple of years when it was talked about. I liked it when we did it this time. But even if someone had said, Randall and Cat are just about as good this offseason, I would have been like, statistically it looks like that. There's no comparison. And that's no disrespect to Julius Randall. This is the second best offensive center in the league. And last night, by the way, he outplayed the best offensive center in the league. The numbers are just ridiculous. The impact on the floor is ridiculous. And I think, there's warts on defense. There's a reason we were able to get him. If he was even an average defender, he would be in MVP conversations, right? Because he's putting up a Nikola Jokic type of season. Not Jokic this season has also been just insane, but Cat is putting the kind of season up that would not seem out of place in Nikola Jokic's career. But I think the Knicks need to help him out. I think they have the personnel to do it. But in terms of, I mean, he's just been awesome to watch. I just personally enjoyed it, and the passing has been kind of the cherry on top. But it's helped everyone out too, and it makes them a really, really dangerous team in the playoffs.
I mean, how many centers in the league have been better than him so far this season?
Yeah, I asked this in the Discord. So Jokic. The Discord said Jokic because of the defense, Wembanyama, Chet, and then if you count AD as a center. When I asked this, I wasn't thinking of AD as a center, but if you count him, then you have to say he's been better than Cat.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with those. Wemby, Chet, although Chet has been injured. Wemby, Chet, AD.
I'm just not going to give it to Wemby. Fuck that guy. I'm just not going to do it. I'm sorry. He's played like 7 games in his career. Fuck him. But yeah, I mean, in the East, like to me, I don't even think there's a question. He's been the best center in the East. Like he's been better than Bam.
He shows up to meetings on time.
Yeah, he shows up to meetings on time, which is nice. He's been better than Bam. He's been better than Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, as good as those guys have played. He's been better than Embiid, who just hasn't played. I don't even. I mean, Porzingis is back now, so we'll see how that goes. But obviously, he's been better than him just based on the fact that he's played. But yeah, like I don't know. It's just his offensive impact right now is pretty nuts. He's in the 97th percentile in offensive EPM right now, 95th in overall EPM. He's actually at 53rd percentile in defensive EPM, which is like, obviously that's not great, but I think, yeah, you probably take that trade-off, right? Where you're like, yeah, that's fine. Like if your offense is going to be that
it's
good,
his position, right? Like if you're a center, like I'm sure Enes Kanter was like never lower than like 40th percentile EPM, but when you're a center, you're getting compared to guards. So even like he's going to have a higher impact than most guards. So the threshold's higher.
Yeah, but I would still take that trade-off. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very, very impressed by the way he's played. I think his rebounding has been fantastic. That's probably the part of his game that I've been most pleasantly surprised by. Like, because it's not just getting the type of free rebounds that we used to let Julius get, because then he could push the ball up the floor. It's getting, real rebounds, ending possessions, competitive rebounds, contested rebounds. And honestly, I like that I like that when he gets the ball, gets the rebound, he's just like, okay, let me give it to Brunson. Let me give it to Hart. Let me give it to whoever. And he just gets himself up the floor. I think his conditioning has been fantastic. I still don't think he gets enough credit for that. He's come in and how many games have you watched and been like, man, Cat looks exhausted? I can't remember.
And he's playing heavy minutes too.
Yeah, I can't remember one. He's played 40+ minute games, like that game against Chicago, and he looked fantastic all through the fourth quarter of it. So I'm really, really impressed by those things. You talked about the passing. The numbers are not popping, right? 3.1 assists. Yeah, I mean, look, that's not going to stand out, in a league where fucking Jokic is averaging 11 assists a game or whatever. But the biggest thing to me, and this is something obviously Thibs has done an excellent job with now with so many players, his turnover rate is just so low. It's a career low. It's at 9.1%. And that's despite he's tied for the highest usage of his career so far this season. So, I mean, it's like just his decision-making consistently has been good. And like, yeah, he's going to pick up a couple stupid fouls here or there, and it is what it is. You got to deal with it. But aside from that, the passing, the rebounding, and it's like, it's not just passing in terms of assists. It's not forcing things. It's finding the open man and keeping possessions flowing. Like, he's just really good about that. And I think his screening has improved tremendously since the start of the season. Clearly, him and Brunson are starting to have a much cleaner rapport running pick and rolls. I mean, yesterday, they were so, like, their chemistry yesterday in the pick and roll, I thought was unbelievably good. Brunson was in complete command of the offense, but you just saw the way that they were playing that 2-man game, and Carl understood, like, when to pop, when to roll, and all those things. Those are things that at the start of the season were a struggle for them, right? We were like, why aren't they running more pick and roll? Why, when they run pick and roll, is Carl rolling to like 20 feet? Like, what's the point of this? But now you're seeing them leverage that in more productive ways. And the crazy thing about it, in terms of like, it's not like he's just jacking up a bunch of threes. He's only averaging 5.3 attempts per game this season. I certainly thought that would be higher. But despite that being the case, I don't really have a problem with it right now, because he's getting good shots. Like he's just getting good shots because we're playing 5 out. So when he does put the ball on the deck, he's able to get to the rim and draw fouls and whatever. He's one of the few guys in the team that's pretty consistently getting to the line. So yeah, I'm thoroughly. He's easily exceeded the expectations I had from certainly at this stage of his time in New York. And there's no reason, maybe the percentages come down a little bit or whatever, but how he's playing, to me, I don't think there's any reason to feel like this is anything unsustainable, because the decision making has been clean, and that underpins all of the statistical improvements we're seeing.
Yeah, not to dump on either of them, but on their new team, it's not like Randall has been playing well, right? But not up to the standards that he was at in New York. He's been efficient, but you've seen some of the warts. I think you look at there are possessions will hold the ball too long, right? They're all
Randall, come on, no way.
And then Dante has actually struggled quite a bit, I believe, to start the season.
Yeah, he's not shot the ball well at all.
Which I would.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think
if you're going to be optimistic about Mikal Bridges coming back to shoot well, then you should definitely be optimistic about the other Wildcat there. But it shows you that, I think the concern that people will say maybe as well, like Randall, Cat was a playoff dropper, but it hasn't won. I can't remember the last time he was in this comfortable a situation. So
also his playoff dropping is not.
It's not the same level.
It's not even like they're playing entirely different fucking sports in the playoffs. I mean,
yeah.
Right now,
for what it's worth, I do think Randall will be better. If he gets to play in a healthy playoffs, but even then, right? I think he's coming down from a much lower ceiling. And this is just and Cat can hold up better on. Look, you talked about the defensive rebounding. If we did stay with Randall at the 5 and keep up that experiment, I think the defensive rebounding would have suffered. It certainly would have been elite.
Oh my God, it would have been it. Yeah, he does not box out. Julius Randle is one of the. His rebounding numbers have generally they were very inflated in New York, is what I will say.
Yeah, I think he's a good rebounder, but yeah, he won't box out. He does this arm swat thing quite a bit that resulted in him getting fouls at opportune moments or just getting beat for a rebound. Whereas Cat is bigger and more fundamentally sound. And the space he creates, it's been the perfect fit on offense. Now, how do we make it work on defense? And I'll say this, right? The 2 best teams in the East are the Celtics and the Cavs, right? Neither of them have been great offensive teams.
Great offensive teams?
Did I say defensive teams, right? So both have been elite. Those are the other 2 teams that are neck and neck with the Knicks.
They're 7th and 8th in defensive rating right now. So not elite, but pretty damn good.
Okay, I thought they were. I'm seeing in defensive rating. I'm seeing 8th and 10th on NBA.com.
Okay, yeah. So
so they are good, but not elite, right? I think last week when I saw they were like in the teens. But that might have been that Kirk Goldsberry last 10 or last 15, whatever games. The Knicks, but they're not. The point is they're doing it with offense, right? It is if you have an elite offense, you can make up for it with at least having good enough defense that doesn't have. I think the bigger thing is, do you have holes that a great team can persistently attack? Which I definitely think Boston doesn't. I think Cleveland does. That'll be interesting. But that's not, the Knicks do not need to get all the way up to the top. And so how do you make that happen, right? How much will Precious and Mitch coming back? Precious seems like he'll be good to go pretty soon. Does he play much with Cat? How much does that protect Cat? I think if Sims is looking like a viable backup, I would try more Precious at the 4 minutes, especially if nothing else, it helps you rest Anunoby, who they should be keeping in like an adamantium suit all the time. It's not that far a bridge to cross. to get to just the kind of level where they're good enough. And the playoffs are just a different beast, right? To your point, it was weird. It was interesting to me that they, like in 2 years ago, they had this elite offense and like a decent, were they eighth or something in defensive rating when they played the Cavs? And the opposite happened, right? They ended up having the worst. They were the 13th and 14th worst teams. And then the same thing in the Miami series. It was just to grind it out. Even though the Knicks were a much better offensive team than defensive team, both of those series ended up being grinded out, low scoring series. Last year, when they were better on defense, they end up playing in two series where I don't think their defense played particularly well at all. And both were high scoring series. The Sixers series was a little slower, so the raw offensive output doesn't show it. So playoffs end up being a lot more about matchups, about what you can do schematically. So I'll kind of throw this back to you. How have you felt? We've talked a lot about the personnel and some of the shortcomings there. Tom Thibodeau is a defensive coach, right? So having a great offense.
Is he?
Right?
Is he a defensive coach?
He's known as a defensive coach, as a good defensive coach.
I don't disagree he's a good defensive coach. I just don't understand this label of him as a defensive coach.
No, so what I'm saying is I think he's proven now, right? He's a much better I mean, Malone actually said that, by the way, in the press conference, right? That people say he's not a good offensive coach. You can see it now. And I do think he deserves some credit. We can only talk about how he's kind of leaned into 5-out and helped create this environment. But I do want to ask, because my feeling would be if your problem is that you have elite offensive personnel and are lacking in defensive personnel, that should be the kind of thing that Thibs, given his track record, can fix. That's a good position to be in if you have Tom Thibodeau. And I would be curious, A, how much you buy that, and B, how have you felt about, the schematic diversity on defense and what he's done there, and how well equipped the Knicks might be to overperform, if they end up with a middling defensive rating.
I mean, I'm pretty, I think that's, I talked about it earlier. Like I would be shocked if the Knicks continue to have the same defensive issues throughout the rest of the season. I'm I'm fine with the scheme. I'm fine with the diversity of it. I think they're switching up coverages more in pick and rolls. They're using their bigs in different ways. So I'm fine with that. To me, I can't go back to this. There's two things that just need to change. One is Mikal Bridges needs to play better. That's it. Like, there's really nothing else to say about that. If he's going to be your point of attack defender, he needs to be way better than he's been. And the clear example of that is Deuce McBride, because when Deuce McBride comes in, the defense has been better, flat out throughout the course of the season. And there's a reason for that, because he gives you a really solid point of attack defender. And now all of a sudden, you're not having to collapse the paint as much. And then your rotations don't have to be as elongated as they are. So that's part one. Mikal Bridges has to be better. The second one is the rotations and general concentration and understanding of where you need to be off ball. That needs to be better. And that's across the board. That's not just on one guy. That is, even OG has had moments off ball where you're like, where are you at? Josh Hart has had a brutal season off ball. Yesterday was a lot better. He talked about it himself after the Utah game, right? Where he was very critical of the Knicks defense, his defense, whatever. So he showed yesterday, like, okay, when he locks in, he's still capable of obviously being a quality defender. Mikal Bridges, obviously off ball, and these are all connected, right? Because it's like if one guy lets go of the rope, then it hurts everybody. So the off ball rotations, understanding where guys need to go, those are things that, again, you generally would expect to improve over the course of a season. Will it? I don't know. Again, I would hope so, but it needs to happen. Until then, it's just a question mark, and we're all guessing on what will they or won't they. But yeah, I'm not watching them and thinking like, there were moments earlier in the season where the scheme was like, Cat's way too deep in a drop, and we know that he struggles in drop, so I didn't love that. And it was very consistent, right? It was like we were playing drop on basically every pick and roll, and that was tough. But that isn't the case right now. They're switching up coverages. Yesterday they were doing a lot of trying to kind of show hard at Murray, force the ball out of his hands on pick and rolls, hard hedging. You've seen more of that. At times you've seen them switching, especially with Sims, So you're seeing way more diversity in how they're covering that specific thing. But off-ball actions have still been problematic for them. Even last night, there were moments where they had struggled with that. But, you know, it's one thing to struggle with execution. It's another thing to struggle with understanding what to do. And the latter, I would expect to improve over the course of the season. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is like a bad place to be necessarily defensively, because you're doing some of the basics already, right? You've switched up your pick and roll coverages, so you're not doing the same thing all the time. And your defensive rebound percentage, your defensive rebounding in general, has improved significantly. So, force, if you force, like, can you force? I mean, this is really as simple as it is. Can you force 3 or 4 more misses a game? Can you generate 1 more turnover a game? That's basically that. Pretty much will get you to like average or slightly above average on defense. That's it. It's like this. These are the fine margins, right, of NBA basketball, where the difference between the worst defensive team in the league and the best defensive team in the league is probably like 10 possessions, really. So, can the Knicks achieve that? I would like to think so. But until they do, we're just guessing. But yeah, I mean, the other thing they're doing a good job of is they're not fouling too much. They have the 12th lowest kind of free throw rate allowed in the league. So they're controlling a lot of things. They're controlling a few things they can't control. They need to do a better job of executing to scheme and being on a rope and kind of helping the next man and building up that trust. So yeah, that's where I'd be on that.
Yeah, I mean, basketball, like life, is this game of inches. It's a game of possessions. So one possession this way, another possession. It was a good. That was a good halftime speech. You should send that to Thibs. That's a good motto for the team to follow. But I totally agree. I think the turnover,
the inches we need, they're all around us.
The turnover, especially thing, I think they should be able to improve. I know they don't like to foul, but we know that OG and Josh Hart are great at deflections. I think for his career, Bridges has been better at playing with force and forcing those deflections. So it's that's, I think, an area where there's and just being tighter. I don't know. They give up a ton of threes. I think Prez looked at it yesterday. I think they're fourth worst they give up the fourth highest 3-point attempt rate. I think per game it's a little bit lower, like 7th or something. And in transition, the 3-point frequency is second. I mean, last year they started off very poor on the 3-point defense as well. Part of that, and that changed. And it was not just it wasn't just that they improved. Part of it was they replaced a guy who struggled, frankly, quite a bit on defense, in RJ Barrett, with one of the best defenders in the league, right? But if you remember early in the season last year, it wasn't just RJ, right? Guys like Grimes, guys like Dante, who was new to the team, were out of position quite a bit at the 3-point line. And the pick and roll defense, depending on who you're playing with, you're going to have different schemes. All of that, you'd like all of that, you would think is going to improve. I can't remember the year before how they started the season on defense, but they obviously improved a lot in the playoffs. I just thought they were great against Cleveland, even though a big part of it was just leave LeVert or whoever open. So I think that I'll be very curious to see, though, what exactly improves. Can they get? I would love to see them force more turnovers. One thing I've kind of thought about, and given they play him so many minutes, it might not be an option. But Hart has really struggled, to your point, off ball this season. He's in the wrong place a lot, over helping. I wonder if freeing him up to just be an attack dog at the point of attack would help for some more turnovers, right? Because you see the Knicks facing a lot of teams that are pressuring Brunson in the backcourt. It takes them 8, 9, 10 seconds just to get into the set, and then Brunson's with his back turned to the basket. Now, your counter could totally be, the Knicks are still torching teams, and that's fine. But the Knicks have good help defenders behind behind Hart, right? So can you put Hart on some guard, force them, take time off the clock as they try to get into the offense, and now you have 2, 6, 7 guys off ball, who with long arms who can really get in those passing lanes. And then what we've seen is that the Knicks are pretty damn good in transition. It's a good way to get a guy like Bridges going. Anunoby is basically an automatic dunk when he gets behind the defense or gets a steal. We know what Brunson and Cat can do, obviously, and Hart is great at getting to the rim when he has a little bit of space, and he's good. He's become, I would say, with Hart. We should talk more about Josh Hart because I've only talked critically about him, but he's been awesome this year on offense, like legitimately awesome. But I think his decision making is also a lot better than it was last year. And again, that's comfort and continuity playing for the second year with your teammates. But I think those turnovers would also help them be even more dangerous on offense, where they can get in transition, which is still like probably something that Boston and Cleveland, like those two other elite offenses, execute at a slightly better level because we just play slower.
Yeah. Josh Hart right now, at least on NBA.com, I don't know what their qualifiers are, but right now for players that qualify, he's still leading the league in 2-point percentage at 75.3, which is absolutely nuts. He's got a 72 effective field goal percentage, a 67.8 effective field goal percentage, which is 4th in the league according to Basketball Reference. Again, I don't know what the qualifiers are, so there are various guys that don't. But yeah, he's been phenomenal in that sense. He is. I mean, he's also shooting 37% from 3 right now, on 3.5 attempts per game. So across the board, he's having a phenomenal season offensively. He's averaging just under 6 assists per game. He obviously fills up the stat sheet with rebounds as well. Like right now, he's averaging 14 points, 8.6 rebounds, 5.8 assists. He's getting you 1 steal a game as well. So he's filling it up, and he's doing it efficiently. He's doing it in ways that matter. They talked about it on the broadcast yesterday, Jamal Crawford, about how you really need to watch the game to kind of see how he impacts it. And sometimes I think that's a cliche and stupid, but I also think it's Josh Hart has unfairly at times, myself included, been criticized when he doesn't shoot threes or doesn't shoot enough threes, and it ignores all the stuff he does do. And to me, a lot of that criticism right now is just continuing to lean into it would be wrong, and it's not accurate because he is giving you value on offense. And the value of 5 out isn't just like, oh, we can all launch threes. It's opening up the paint to take advantage of that. And him and OG Anunoby, those two very specifically, I think, are benefiting from it in a massive way. Yeah, he's been awesome. He's been arguably one of the driving forces behind the team's elite offense. Defensively, definitely needs to focus up. He's had some really bad off-ball stuff, in terms of concentration and bad closeouts and stuff like that. But offensively, there's really no question about his value so far this season. And look, the other thing too about him, and I don't know where you fall on this, but I personally do think clutch is a thing. I think having the willingness, the comfort, the I don't give a fuck about taking big shots, be it situationally, be it up against a shot clock, be it up against a game clock, all those type of things. He's proven time and time and time again that he is up for those moments. And this year again, he's been phenomenal with these end of shot clock, end of possession, grenade type possessions in terms of creating offense for himself and generating quality shots and hitting on them. That's a value. Like I don't think I really don't even know how anybody can deny it, because if you watch, again, I hate to go back to him, but if you watch Mikal Bridges in a lot of those spots, he's not comfortable right now, and he doesn't really want the ball, and he's not really trying to bail his team out in a lot of those instances. It's like a hot potato at times. Josh Hart, he's got that understanding. For as much as he makes plays that I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? He makes some bonehead plays at times, but he is an intelligent player. Like he understands game situation, I think, fairly well. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. He's just been fucking great this year, offensively. And I don't know. I just always feel like he brings a certain physicality and a force and just like a sheer will to how we play that is necessary and is good. And he gives us, I think he adds an edge to this team that maybe they don't quite have without him. And he does it in a way that's interesting to me because a lot of guys that we talk about, like, oh, this guy plays with an edge, right? It's like these are guys that kind of almost border on being dirty, right? Like you talk about, like,
Draymond. Well,
yeah, like
Draymond doesn't border. He is, but
yeah, like
Draymond is the
Draymond,
example that a lot of people use with Hart.
right? Yeah, and I look, Draymond definitely has a litany of dirty plays in his career. A lot of championship teams have guys like that. I do think that, like, having a guy who plays on the edge is a real thing of value. But it's cool. Like Josh Hart plays with an edge without kind of getting into that type of stuff. And I think this team needs that because, like, this is not to say these guys are soft because I don't think they are soft, but I don't think Karl-Anthony Towns plays with like an edge like that. I don't think OG Anunoby plays with an edge like that, or Brunson. Certainly not Mikal Bridges, or Deuce McBride, or whatever. Like, there's something to like being feisty and annoying that has value. And in terms of that, a guy that we have not even talked about yet today, who I think deserves some flowers, is Campaign, because I think Campaign brings some of that too, where he's just annoying to play against, right? He's just a pest. And that's not to say he's like some perfect defender or lockdown or anything like that, but he competes. And that's the thing with like a guy like Hart and a guy like Campaign is they'll fuck up and it'll be frustrating at times, but I'll always be willing to give players like that the benefit of the doubt because there's a competitiveness and I think there's a willingness to own up to, like, when it's your mistake, right? When it's like, no, I fucked that up. And then not just to own it, but then to have that fuel you in ways that are productive. And I think both of those guys are emblematic of that. And, when you lose, you look at kind of like everything the Knicks have lost in terms, and they haven't just lost players, right? They've lost players while acquiring others. So it's a give and take. But like when you lose a guy like Dante, who I don't think I think he was actually really overrated defensively. But there was always like a quality effort with him. You never felt like, oh, he's mailing it in here. Execution and playing to scheme, those things could be hit or miss, but the effort was always there, and you appreciate that. Hartenstein, another guy where you appreciate, like, yeah, like obviously he had a terrible playoffs and whatever, but the effort was not anything you ever questioned. The toughness, right? The willingness to mix it up and play through whatever the fuck you've got going on. Those are things that matter. And I think they matter because they help set the culture and they help set the tone for your team. And Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, whatever, these guys are all better players than Josh Hart. But I think he is a guy that sets the tone for this team. And he does that both in the way that he carries himself on the court, but also the way I think, look, the quotes of his that get the most traction are the ones where he's fucking around and just saying whatever's on his mind, right?
Breast milk.
Yes. But like the quotes he gives, like, you read these quotes after the Utah game and you just like, go back to the Chicago game, right? Where he commits the foul to send Kobe White to the line and they end up losing the game because of it. You look at his quotes after the game, like he took ownership of that situation. And that's important. That's really important because you need guys that take that accountability. And obviously Brunson does that too. Brunson does that in a very like corporate speaky, like I've taken media training type of way. And it's genuine, but it's like very clean and it's exactly what you should say, right? I think Hart, because he speaks from the heart, but like he does speak from the heart. And I think there's something to that. I think there's something to like having somebody like that on your team who is a leader. And that comes through with obviously how he plays in the court, but it also comes through with the way he takes responsibility and you know, in a lot of ways, like you think about what Josh Hart is as a player, he's a great role player. But it's interesting that like in a lot of ways he is the voice of this team, right? He is like the guy that I think he is the tone setter. And it just comes through in so many ways. And look, his play this year has whatever, even with the defensive issues he's had, it's really difficult to say anything but like Josh Hart's been tremendous so far this season.
Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Let me ask you this too. I think when the Knicks made the trades, right? The trades they made this summer, you lose DiVincenzo, you lose Randall for whatever criticism people had. He played with a physicality, and you knew, a lot of players have talked about this, right? You go against Julius Randall 48 minutes, you feel it the next day. And I think when the Knicks made these trades and revamped the roster this year, there was a worry beyond just any defensive considerations that they might be more of a finesse team, right? Especially now with Mitch out, you're not gonna go after the offensive glass as much. You might be weaker on defense. We know the defense is weaker. It definitely seems to me though that like this is still a tough team that's a pain in the ass to play. And they can really, I think they've blown teams out more frequently, I think, this year than I can remember. Even that Detroit's not a very good team, but the way they just kind of slowly but surely like take the life out of teams still feels to me like a tough team, mentally and physically. So I'm curious, like, do you think? And I think Hart probably deserves a lot of credit for that. He is that guy. To your point, I think. I would add, I think Deuce is that like pest as well. I think Deuce has a lot of that, where like especially on, I mean that I'll always bring up that Donovan Mitchell game, but he's a little bit more quiet on the court. He isn't as effusive. He doesn't. I think he plays very hard defense, but isn't, and he tries to make ball handlers uncomfortable, and he's physical, but I don't think he tries to get under people's skin, maybe in quite the same way. But I'm curious, like, do you think the Knicks still have that identity as like a physical team, or are they more of a finesse team now, and how much does that matter?
God, I don't think they're a finesse team. I think Mikal Bridges is a finesse player. Like, I don't watch OG Anunoby or Brunson or Hart or Cat or Jericho Sims or Campaign or Deuce McBride. Like, I don't watch these guys and think like, man, they're kind of soft or they're finessey. Like, I think Mikal Bridges is playing soft. I think he's playing like a finesse player. And I think that hurts your defense very specifically in ways that have cascading effects, right? Like I talked, like the off-ball rotations have to be better, right? You want to know what helps off-ball rotations? Being physical at the point of attack, providing resistance, not allowing ball handlers to get wherever the fuck they want, and rolling out the red carpet for them. That usually helps. And he's been the biggest culprit of that all season, to the point that, I have talked about maybe we should try Josh Hart at the point of attack, and others have talked about maybe we should put OG at the point of attack. And that's all well and good. But the reason you necessarily probably don't want those guys at the point of attack is they're better off-ball defenders than Mikal Bridges is in the sense of, right, Josh Hart is a phenomenal defensive rebounder when the shot goes up. He's also good at digging down. Ditto for OG Anunoby, who provides you an additional layer of rim protection. And you need that because Karl-Anthony Towns, as we know, is not a great rim protector or even a good one. And that's, to me, I don't think it's about they lack physicality or I think it's one guy. I really think when we're talking about this, it's about one guy. And I really don't like singling him out, especially not after like last night's game or even the Utah game where it wasn't just him, right? It wasn't like Mikal Bridges was single-handedly cratering their defense, but he was in some ways singled out by his coach, not verbally, not in the press, but he was benched in the fourth quarter of that game, right? He did not go back to him. He left Campaign in the game. And what was Mikal Bridges' reaction to that? What did he say after the game? Oh, well, I'm not focused on that. My focus is just on winning games. Like, are you
Well, that's like the right thing to say,
No,
right?
it's not. No, it's
That's
not the
the
right thing.
coach.
No,
That's the
no,
corporate right
I
thing to say.
disagree. I disagree. I
You
don't
don't think
think
you'd be
it's
coached to say that?
no, I don't think it's the right thing to say. I think the right thing to say is, I played poorly. I need to be better. I have to be better. I need to step it up. That's the right thing to say. The right thing to say is not who is questioning that you want to win? That's not the question. No one's questioning first of all, every NBA player wants to win. That's not nobody ever fucking plays a game and is like, man, I don't want to win. Everybody wants to win the game. What are you willing to do to win the game? That's what matters. What are you willing to do? What is your approach? How are you going to help your team win the basketball game? How are you going to do that? That's what matters. And his quote after that game was infuriating to me. It was a joke. It's like you need more from the guy. You really need more from the guy. I just talked about fucking for like 10 minutes about Josh Hart and all the way he sets the tone and all these things he does, these intangible things that he does. Where is any of that right now from Mikal Bridges? And that quote to me, and on top of that quote, we go back last week, we talked about those quotes he gave about, oh, well, you pay rim protectors to protect the rim, so it's hard to go down there. And it's like, dude, what are these quotes, man? What the fuck? Like, these are all quotes that are, I don't think I'm being harsh or extreme. Is there any way to describe quotes like that other than seems pretty soft, man? Does not seem like the kind of mindset you want. Like, your mindset when you get benched in the fourth quarter for Campaign, bless his heart, who's playing well, who I'm very pleased that the Knicks have, by the way, for a veterans minimum. Shout out to Daryl Morey, who didn't think he was worth it. But he fell on his bench with a bunch of quality guys anyway. So good work, Daryl. But when you get benched for Campaign down the stretch of a game, I want more than I want to win, and so I understand the decision. I'm not here. Come on, man. Nobody wants to hear that shit. Nobody wants to hear that shit. Have some fucking pride. Have some pride in yourself. Because your reaction to that should be nothing. It should be nothing more than I have to be better. I have got to step it up. And I mean, again, I thought he was better yesterday against Denver defensively, but I mean, would you say you watched that game and you were like, what a great reaction from Mikal Bridges?
No, but I mean, a lot of that was the shots not falling. I thought the team defense was good. I actually thought it was really good. I don't know what, like I said, I don't know Denver's offensive rating. They had 118 points, but they were not seriously threatening.
The second half was just, it was kind of whatever, right?
Considering the opponent, can you remember the Knicks having a better defensive performance considering the opponent this season? I can't. Maybe game one, the first time they played Indy.
That's about it. I mean, other than that, and then he had a possession against Brooklyn that was really good. The final possession of a game.
No, I'm talking about the Knicks as a whole.
Defensively?
Yeah. When they've played elite offenses, they struggled against Atlanta. They collapsed against Cleveland. Boston, nothing more needs to be said there. Indiana, they had one good game and one bad game. So as a team, I thought that yesterday was probably their best performance given the opponent.
The Pistons game, they were pretty dominant, but that's the Pistons.
That's why I said considering the opponent, right?
They destroyed the Bucks, which, the Bucks scored 94 points in that game.
But the Bucks haven't been a great offensive team, have they?
I believe they've been. I think they're pretty good now. I'd have to check. I can check right now. The Bucks are. Oh wow, you're right. Their offense is not where I expected it to be. They're 14th in offensive rating. So yeah, you're right. Not that great.
The Nuggets are 9th, but the Nuggets again have one of the best offensive players ever in his prime.
And even Indiana's offense, to your point, they haven't been that good offensively this year.
So as a team, I think they probably ended up right in line with their season-long offensive rating with the second half that was unserious. We held them 24 points in the first quarter. So I'm not going to get on Mike Mikal for his defense yesterday. And I think if the shots fall, and for what it's worth, right, I thought he was pretty aggressive.
I don't
shooting the three.
I don't have a
It
problem
wasn't
with
a
it.
great response to your point. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with this. Like the threes he's taking, yeah, I think they're good threes. You want him to take those threes. I don't understand why he feels the need to not like square up when he's wide open in the corner. I don't get that, but whatever. I agreed. He needs to take those threes. I have no problem with him taking those threes. And honestly, I think over time, he's going to make more of those than not. I'm not that worried about the 3-point shooting in all honesty.
Yeah.
But but defensively,
so
like
if they go down yesterday, I think we're looking at that as a good bounce back performance. He took 8 mid range shots. We hit 4.
I'm sorry. Like I don't think his defense was particularly good yesterday. I think the team's defense was good. So
Yeah, so you'd want to see more on defense. I agree with you there. But I also don't think he was particularly bad.
he
Again,
wasn't bad.
your
He just
larger
wasn't.
point was that you would like him to like you got benched for campaign. That should light a fire under her ass.
Yeah, like where is that? Like where there's no fire there. There's like you're thinking, okay, you got bench for campaign. This guy's going to be going balls to the wall, and nope, no. He had 2 rebounds last night. 2 rebounds. Like he didn't have a steal. He didn't have a block. He didn't get to the free throw line. Like the things that you would kind of view as if a guy has a fire lit under his ass, where do you expect to see that reflected? Did he blow up a screen yesterday? No. Like I just need more. I need more. And to answer your question, no, I don't think the Knicks are a soft team, but I do think they have one particularly soft player right now who needs to step it up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting times ahead for sure. And so the Knicks. So we talked before this road trip, right? About what would be successful outcomes and all of that. So the Knicks so far 2-1, which that's what I would have hoped for, especially with Durant out. You hope they beat the Suns. I think going 1-1 with Jazz and Nuggets, I probably would have expected the other order, but totally fine with this. And then so they, at worst they close out this road trip, which will have 2 playoff contenders at 2-2, which I said I would have been fine with. That was before I realized Durant wasn't going to play. But you look at I don't think they match up great with Dallas. But Dallas has a great wing who I mean, how do you think they're going to match up? I guess with Dallas, I think you probably put OJ on Luka and Hart on Kyrie, or Bridges on Kyrie.
Luka's not playing.
Luka's not playing. Oh, so then that is a game that you would expect the Knicks to win. Although last time is he out for extended, or
I think he's just out for this week, or he was out for a week, including this game. They announced that last week, so I don't know when he's going to be back. I don't think it's a long-term injury though.
Okay, the Knicks play the Mavs on Wednesday. So then that's a game you would expect them to win, right? And I imagine they put OG on Kyrie at least to start.
I think Mikal will be on Kyrie.
I mean, OG has been taking those assignments more frequently of late.
Sorry, say it again.
OG has been taking those assignments more frequently of late, though.
I think they switch it up more now, which is good. I like that's one thing I do actually have some sympathy for Mikal, where it's like any the best ball handlers, right? Like if you just throw the same guy at them over and over again, they eventually figure it out. So you want to mix that up, and I think they're doing that more. But Mikal is going to get the assignment to start off with. I mean, he's started off every game at the point of attack, so I don't see any reason for that. But look, I'll tell you this: I said this last week too. We are very lucky Luka is not playing in this game, because if you had both those guys out there, Mikal would be getting destroyed no matter where you put him. Based on what he's shown us so far, his pick and roll defense, he'd be getting destroyed. He's got to be way better. Wednesday is going to be his biggest trial by fire to date this year in terms of defending a pick and roll ball handler. And Kyrie's playing at a high level this year again. So we'll see how he responds. He's got every opportunity to prove to all of us how much he cares about winning, since apparently that's what matters to him, and which we were all questioning. But Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think it'll be a good game. It's definitely the Knicks' stiffest test, I think, so far this season, other than Boston, which was the first game of the season, which is its own thing, and Cleveland, which was an early season game, which was also weird. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how they respond. I think Dallas, they're playing really well. They won a hell of a game yesterday, pretty shorthanded against Atlanta. So we will we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, like, is there anything you've seen? I know we've talked about this, that, we expect the team to kind of be hovering around 500, not hovering around, but in this 500 range. Do you expect that to continue? Is there anything that's changed kind of especially looking forward to the schedule, how and how teams have performed? The schedule does open up a little bit, so they get the Hornets, who have been feisty and launch a lot of threes, so have the ability to upset the Knicks. They get the Pelicans, who have been pretty moribund. They will see old friend Alfred Payton, who had 21 assists last night for the Pelicans. Shout out Alfred Payton. And so they do have the Magic again, but they get Hornets, the Pistons, Raptors. So that's two teams that are probably not making the playoffs, plus the Hornets that are a worse team. The schedule opens up quite a bit, right? They're facing Pistons, Raptors, Pelicans, 3 out of the next 5 games. They should be able to, and then the Hornets twice. So they're facing really only one contender in the next 6 games. So they can put some gaps between them and 500. But I'm just curious, do you see them kind of putting some distance between that? Or do you just still see like this as an inconsistent team? Because it's now 17 games in. I think 20 games is the benchmark. So
Look, they play
macro,
they
besides
play them.
Bridges, do you see them like starting to get that consistency?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they've been more consistent lately. I mean, they've blown out. If you go back, I mean, they put up. These are their last 6 games. Offensively, they've been really consistent, so they're definitely finding a groove there. They've scored since starting from November 13th, which was the Chicago game that they lost. They've scored 123, 124, 114, 134, 138, 106, 145. It would be nice for them to keep a single team below 110 points at some point. That would be cool. I'd be into that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not, again, the offense isn't the concern. It's about finding themselves defensively. They haven't shown that they can put together a full 48 minutes. At times they haven't needed to. And at times you understand why they haven't needed, they haven't done it. Like against Phoenix and Denver, I understand why you don't put together a full 48 minutes defensively. I'm not losing my mind about that. But Dallas, they haven't played a lot of close games, right? The Knicks have not played a lot of close games, weirdly enough. Tomorrow, hopefully, is a good game. I mean, yeah, I would love if the Knicks just blow them out, but if it's a close game, it'll be interesting to see how they react because Kyrie is one of the best fourth quarter scorers in the league. And he's consistently been problematic against the Knicks. So, yeah, I think tomorrow will be a good indication it'll be a good measuring stick to see where they are, even without Luka, because they've been good. I mean, this is a team that went into Denver and won without Luka Doncic. They beat Oklahoma City without Luka Doncic on the road. So it's a good test. I think we'll have a lot more answers after this. So, all right. I think that's a good place to end it. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at Stacy Patton 89. Nothing to plug. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving.
I will also echo that. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I have nothing to plug personally. I will plug all the work of Strickland. Check out the videos that Prez has been putting out on our YouTube channel. Those are really, really good, informative stuff. Check out all the various podcasts that we have out and check out the recaps and the articles and all that good stuff. All right. That is our show for today. Thank you to our sponsor, BetOnline. Thank you to everybody for listening. And I will see everybody. I'm not sure when me and Prez are recording. We might not record until sometime on Friday. So maybe you'll get that Saturday. But be on the lookout for that pod. We'll definitely have it out for you. So until then, peace.